Hi! This time I am going to talk about a very unique magic system that you can employ in your tabletop role-playing games. More than anything, it's a way to provide some logic within a fictional context on why magic exists. And although there could be, let's say, this video is going to be science fiction. It depends on the viewer. If he or she wants to attribute some of the things that I mentioned to reality, that's your thing. But this is all science fiction. Okay. The magic system in question appears in an anime and manga known as Zetsuen no Tempest, the Civilization Blaster. I really like that series. I think that the manga is much better than the anime. In other cases, I actually like the anime better than the manga, but this is the other way around. And it's a somewhat complex situation because if you study the story carefully, you will see that there are many Kabbalistic keys or secrets. I think that a lot of you, or perhaps most of you, know that Kabbalah is one of the most powerful magical systems. It is the true nature of the Jewish tradition. I actually consider. Remember, YouTube, this is science fiction. Within the science fiction context, I consider Judaism to be one of the worst things, just like Christianity, just like Islam. They are cults to drive people away from true divinity, from your personal understanding of what God is. By the way, a lot of people do not know this, but God is actually a Proto-Germanic word. And it is a very complex concept. Our human minds cannot grasp such an omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, you could say, such an omniscience. The omniscience of that concept is very difficult or perhaps impossible for for a human being to fully understand. So it's within that framework. But like I said, Kabbalah is very powerful. In fact, the Jewish Tanakh was pretty much taken or borrowed or stolen by Christianity. The Old Testament is the Jewish Tanakh. They just slapped in the New Testament, the Jesus propaganda, and they actually modified many things to keep people in the dark. They have modified that. They have also modified the Book of Enoch. That will become important later on in this video. And remember, this is all science fiction. Okay, in Zetsuen no Tempest, there are going to be spoilers in this video. So if you haven't seen that anime or manga, please check it out first. But if you don't mind, then continue watching this video, please. The plotline is quite complex. It is an apocalyptic setting. The world is suddenly getting destroyed by these giant trees. They basically appear, they start to drain the energy from the planet, and people start to suffer this magical disease where they turn to stone. I think it was stone, but they basically turn into statues. Have you noticed that there are some very large mountains, mesetas, some large rock formations in this planet that have an unusual structure? They almost look like geometrical or hexagonal. Kinda like if you were to cut a tree, the tree stump would have that structure. They look like huge plants, so keep that in mind. I'm going to put a few links in the description. One of those is going to be my video where I talk about how you will never look at sci-fi the same way again. That video contains some very interesting links telling you about the seed carried out by nasal without the L, that thing related to aerospace, nasal, but without the L. And one of my viewers pointed out, Errant Dragon pointed out that the word nasal without the L means deceit, to deceive in Hebrew. Okay, remember, Hebrew is not the same as Jewish. You could have a group of Hebrew people and they could be evil. They could be perhaps into, in this science fiction context, they could be into Judaism. That would be quite evil, especially when they cut the tip of the penis. they mutilate the human body. There are many dark things in this science fiction context, but yes, the reason you could be a person from Hebrew blood, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are a true Jew. It's also quite interesting if we analyze trees in those traditions. You also have the Germanic tradition. I think that's one of the main reasons. Definitely, that's one of the main reasons why they want to create this war between the Germanic and the Jewish tradition, because otherwise people take both traditions and they start to realize that they are pieces of the same puzzle. You have Adam and Eve, Aska and Embla. You have the eagle and the snake in both traditions. Remember what I said about the Mexican flag with the eagle and the snake? They are fighting, or rather the eagle is eating the snake on a certain plant, perhaps another version of Yggdrasil. You also have thunder and lightning playing a very important part in the traditions. If you compare the runes, the Norse runes, with the Phoenician alphabet, and you compare the how you call it in English, the Hebrew words, the letters, alephate, I think it's the alephate, right? If you compare those symbols with the Phoenician alphabet, and you compare the runes with the Kabbalistic letters, you will see that there are some very interesting similarities both in the graphic aspect, but also in the connotations, in the meaning, the symbolism. You also have Bifrost Bridge, you have the many-colored coat, you know. There are so many similarities. Oh my god. The tree itself, the Yggdrasil, tree of life. So yes, it's always why they want to divide people so that they don't figure these things out. So like I said, in this anime series, the trees are huge. And when we compare them to everything expressed about trees, especially those things that were removed about trees in the book of Enoch, sometimes these trees are presented as positive things. Sometimes they are presented as things to be destroyed. So it's very interesting, don't you think? Remember to check out the link where I talk about sci-fi. Okay. In that anime, and all of this is important background to realize why the magic system is so unique. I feel like the main characters, the three main characters, they are representative of the true Holy Trinity, which is not the Catholic one, not the Christian one, the three pillars. In Kabbalah, in the Tree of Life, there are three pillars. The pillar of mercy, the one of severity, and the middle pillar, which is the balance. And I feel like there are four incredibly powerful casters in that anime. There are other casters, but the four big ones, one of them is the woman. Her name was Hakase. She represents the middle pillar, in my opinion, the one trying to bring balance. The other two male characters, one of them, in my opinion, represents mercy, because he's actually very kind. He puts out this tough exterior, but he's actually very kind. And you also have the other character, Yoshino. I think that he represents the pillar of severity, because he's very Machiavellian, and that's actually a really good thing. You cannot survive in this world unless you use Machiavellian strategies and tactics. The reason why this name was so satanized was because Machiavello almost brought down the entire Christian church. What a shame. He almost rid humanity of that dogma and doctrine. But he was just a man, still very intelligent, a true one-of-a-kind genius. Okay, moving on. One important thing when it comes to art and entertainment is that sometimes the writers, the authors, they want to hide some messages. I don't know if the author of Zetsuen no Tempest wanted to hide some Kabbalistic keys within his work, or if he accidentally saw these things with some sort of talent as a clairvoyant, someone who can see beyond, kind of like a divinatory act. So maybe he wasn't aware of that, but he actually hit some very interesting keys or symbols in his work. I'm also going to put a link in the description to a community post where I will be writing some of the other, like I'm going to point out the marks in the opening of that anime, the second opening, so you can see more symbols about it. Okay, so yes, those three characters, in my opinion, represent that tripartite or triple power. You have seen this in other places, like for example in Celtic mythology you have the triple goddess. What was it in English? The crone, the maiden, and the mother. So okay, you see how everything is connected. Moving on. Hakase, in particular, she's actually based on Prospero. You know Prospero, who appears in the Shakespearean works. You should investigate about William Shakespeare if you wish to, because he's actually a persona, a false persona composed of various authors. The real William Shakespeare, he actually didn't know how to write. He was basically like a front. So in this science fiction, remember, science fiction. You should look into that. I recommend the Robert Sepper channel. I'm also going to put a link in the description. He has some questionable things to him. There are some signs of narcissism. There are some signs of questionable allegiances, but a lot of his videos, I think they are good. There are also some claims that he has been, how would you say, using the contents, some details of plagiarism, not crediting other people that actually discovered those things. So I'll take what he says with a grain of salt, but there are some valuable things in his videos, in my opinion. Okay, in the anime and manga, not everyone can be a spellcaster. You have particular family bloodlines. You may remember from my couple of other videos where I talk about Rh negative. Only the last time I checked, only within 10 to 15% of the world population, at least as informed to us, you know that in this science fiction context, maybe our world is much bigger than we actually think. So, moving on from that, for the time being, only 10 to 15% of the world population has the Rh negative factor. And that's why so many grimoires, spells, so-called real magic doesn't work for a lot of people, because they are particular spells. Now, I would say that everyone has magic or psychic powers in science fiction. But when it comes to some particular operations, you definitely require the Rh negative blood type. And that's why the tyrants, the evil people in this world, through certain collection of blood, let's call it like that, I am sure you can imagine, they disguise this operation as something positive to help others, but they are actually after that negative magical blood, let's call it like that, and they use it in their vile ceremonies. So yes, it's very interesting because in this anime and manga, only a particular bloodline is able to use the magic. And within those families, you can see that the most powerful spellcasters have long hair. Remember that I have told you that the hair, these hairs are power cells. They obtain energy from the sun. So my personal recommendation, let your hair grow as much as possible. And if you are bald, stop eating so many processed and toxic food and putting things into your body, pharmaceuticals that will not help you. They are poisoning you. They eliminate the symptoms, but not the cause. Approach a more natural and simple chemistry style of life, and you will see that it will return. It will take time, but it will return. So moving on from that, long hair, you have seen it in many heroes, legendary heroes such as Samson, Miyamoto Musashi, Kuhulin. They have this wild, untamed hair. They obtain the energy from the sun. Look at the most overtly totalitarian societies today. They will not allow you to have long hair. Like North Korea and other, I think in some places in China, they don't allow long hair. They want you to cut it so that you do not benefit from the energies of the sun. So yes, I think it's great that they represent that in this anime and manga. That's part of the logic, in my opinion, of their magical powers. But also, the most powerful casters, they are redhead. They have yes, redheaded. Yes, they have red hair. Red hair, or like really close to that. They do not fall into ginger. You know, ginger is very bright orangey. This is more like blood red, or like a reddish brown. And a lot of them also have like clear eyes. In fact, some of the two of the blonde characters in the anime, and they have clear eyes. Well, one has like amber eyes, the other one has blue eyes. Even though they are not using magic, they are quite exceptional. This is where the whole, and remember, this is science fiction, where the whole master race thing occurs or bases its logic on. It's basically fundamented, or based around that people with clear hair, blonde, yellowish, clear white skin, clear eyes, they accidentally do sun gazing. They engage into sun gazing accidentally because they have no protection against, or not one compared to people with darker skin, darker eyes, darker hair. They do not have the same protection from the rays of the sun. So therefore, they absorb the energy of the sun quite easily. That's why in desert regions and unexpected places, for example, look into the Golden Emperor of China, a Chinese emperor that had golden hair. Look at those Buddha statues with blue eyes. Look how Mohammed had red hair. So you can see in those situations that they could have accidentally engaged into sun gazing, even if they didn't carry out the discipline or the practice, because it is so easy for them to absorb the energy. Suddenly they started to obtain magical powers within sci-fi, within science fiction. That's why you also have those amulets of the blue eyes against the evil eye. I personally think that's superstition, because it's not the eyes themselves, it's probably someone in the past saw this blue-eyed individual with perhaps some sort of precognition or some sort of telekinesis or something in sci-fi, in science fiction. And they thought, oh, the blue eyes, they are magical, but it's rather the energy that they absorb. And remember that there is also a risk to this. One of my viewers, Flame Zombie, he has blue eyes, a white skin, and one time he spent too much time in the sun and he got sick because he overloaded on the energy. It was too much power. But with training and tolerance, that is, if you make your body tolerant to the sun, you can actually go farther than that. Wim Hof, he has crossed many deserts shirtless and in shorts, and he has experienced no problem at all. As a person of considerably white skin, I can spend 2 hours in the hot Mexican sun and no problem at all. But like I said, you have to adjust your body little by little. Don't, like, if you are like someone who is always in a dark office or something, don't go out into the sun. Like for 2 hours, you're going to hurt yourself. Funny enough, I have never seen a case of someone who does that has developed skin can waiting for the YouTube algorithm, sir. I think that's caused by the so-called protection creams and lotions that you put on yourself. You're putting those chemicals on your skin. Imagine what they are doing to your skin. So yes, it's quite obvious. Moving on from that, just as a final recommendation before moving on from another point, if you have darker skin, darker eyes, etc., and you are living in a cold environment, you definitely, that is everything, well, it's mostly cloudy most of the time. The sun is going to provide very little energy. I recommend that you bathe yourself in the sun as much as possible. Go out into, in your garden or whatever, and absorb as much energy of the sun as possible, because otherwise, because you have darker skin, you're not going to benefit as much. That's why there are so many people with darker skin in Africa and the like, because they are adapted to their environment. The sun is so hot there, or here in Mexico we have also people in darker skin, although here we tend more towards what we call morenos, or some people call them red skin as well. which I find it very foolish, as I have mentioned, that, oh, it is offensive. Why, if red represents fire, why should it be offensive? And I have said that I have red-skinned ancestors on the American Indian side. So if you have darker skin, make sure that you obtain your energy from the sun in order to stimulate your body so that vitamin D is produced and so forth. Okay, moving on. Like I said, you see these trees that are trying to destroy the world. I am going to point out in my community post, please check out the link in the description. In that anime opening, they show you the Tree of Life. You can see that it's actually a map. It can be used in magical operations or ceremonies, but it's also a diagram, a map. That's up to you to find out, to research if you want to delve into such things. And you will see the shape of the world in that particular context. I have said this before, there are a bunch of useful idiots and perhaps disinformation agents that are spreading this meme, this. Now, I am not talking about anything in particular, this flat meme. They present a certain place as this dish or disc, ridiculous, but it's more complex than that. Think, and this is science fiction. Think about the toroid shape encased into a certain thing. They represent that image in that opening. Check it out, definitely check it out. Have you noticed that the rays of the sun in science fiction, when they filtrate themselves or when they pierce the clouds, they fall a bit diagonally, like at a inclination? That can only happen in that science fiction context. That can only happen if the sun is much closer in that sci-fi setting. If the sun is much closer, then that's why the rays are at an angle, because if it was so far away, the rays would be vertical. They would not fall at an angle. It will also be impossible for eclipses to occur within sci-fi because the sun is too far away. You can do experiments using, for example, a coin and a flashlight, and you will see that the data doesn't add up. They don't want you to apply the scientific method. But like I said, please check out my video where I talk about sci-fi in the description. It will offer you many links for you to use your mind, be a critical thinker, and not swallow the mainstream as it has been carried out throughout the years. A lot of people attack the left and the Democrats. They are trash. They are absolute trash. And the conservatives and the right, the ones in the right, they are trash as well. They have propagated these lies throughout decades. Thanks to them, the establishment was formed. Thanks to them, Big Pharma exists. And the dogma and doctrine communicated through religion and the school system, to the point that you actually think in a science fiction context, they think that you are living in this spinning thing. This is all science fiction, remember. This is fantasy. Spinning everywhere around. It's crazy. Have you ever thought, as a sci-fi experiment, have you ever thought taking a balloon, filling it 50% with helium, 50% with air, and put it in a room where there is no air currents? Leave it there for a day or two. If things are actually moving under the characters in that science fiction setting, the balloon would be on the other side of the room because it has moved, but it will not. Traveling would be quite easy, don't you think? You will only need to get into a balloon and just stay in the air, and then below you things would move, and then you would get to your location. You don't even need to walk. You would stay there, and then the thing below you would move, and then you are now in this other place that is perhaps who knows how many kilometers to one side. And when it comes to using certain aerial vehicles, if you were to travel in the sense in that science fiction setting, against the rotation, then you would save fuel. But pilots know that that is not so. There are many things about this. You can destroy the entire dogma and doctrine communicated in the mainstream education and religion. They want to make you think that religion is against this, but no. Okay, moving on. And remember, if this video is taken down, I have my backup channel in Odyssey. So yes, you see the shape of a certain place in there. And let's talk about a particular character in this setting, because from that point, we are going to talk about the way that magic actually works in that setting. There is a character, a very important character. He's not one of the main three characters, but he's basically a wizard with incredible, exceptional powers, but he's useless. He's a coward, a weakling, a coward, not very intelligent, and not very empathic. You wouldn't say that he's a particularly insightful individual, or an individual that is perceptive of the needs of other people. He's not exactly the self-sacrificing, altruistic, virtuous person that tries to help others. Now, remember, an excess of these qualities is bad as well. You don't want to be a religious person engaging into masochistic practices where you sacrifice yourself for people that do not need it. They do not deserve it, rather. But this character, like, you can tell that he is not very brave, he's not very intelligent, and he's not very empathic. He is a combination of the trinity of the Wizard of Oz. For those of you that do not know, the Scarecrow, he has no brain. He represents the farmer. As remember, in this sci-fi context, in this science fiction, the governments, religions, intelligence agencies, and corrupt corporations, they have convinced people, for example, that farmers are not very smart because they are country folk. They are hicks. They fall into the stereotype of the hillbilly. And there are many hillbillies that are like that, but not necessarily intelligent persons that live in connection with nature. Because in The Wizard of Oz, you can see that the message is that the Scarecrow is actually the most intelligent character. He always had a brain. He just got convinced into thinking that he doesn't have a brain. But he is the most intelligent character. The Tin Man, he represents the soldier, or rather the warrior, I would say the warrior. People that have been put into the service or under the orders of corrupt individuals, they have been convinced that they don't have a heart. But the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, he's one of the most loving characters. He's very warm-hearted. He actually has a heart. He has been convinced that he doesn't have a heart because he cannot see it. Now, when it comes to the lion, the lion represents the true kings of this world, the ones who should be leading people. But they have been convinced that they are not brave. And the lion is the bravest character in The Wizard of Oz. And this character, I forget the name, but this wizard that you can see in the opening as a very clumsy individual that is trying to use his magic, these red discs. I will put the indication in the community post. At first, he is completely useless because he is the three characters of The Wizard of Oz. But later on, you can see a badass in a costume. He looks very cool. It is the same character after he has been properly trained. So that's the three characters of The Wizard of Oz when they realize that they actually have a brain, a heart, and bravery. Now, here is where the magic system gets really interesting. In that sci-fi setting, and this is quite fictional in my opinion, but it could still be related to certain things in the occult. The magic actually comes in that sci-fi, in that fiction. It comes from what you would call aliens, but there is a lot of confusion when it comes to aliens, but let's call them aliens according to that setting. In that fictional world, the characters actually transform technology into magic. In order for you to cast a spell, you need some sort of reagent or artifact. It could be simple technology. It could be, for example, like an axe, a simple axe or a hammer built from tying a rock or attaching a rock to a stick. You can offer that. If you are of that particular bloodline, you offer that, and that gives you like the right to use a particular spell. The more advanced the technology, the greater the magical effects. So if you take like a computer and you sacrifice it, you transmute, rather, you do some sort of transmutation, you turn the computer into magic, the spell is going to be extremely powerful. The more advanced the technology that you transmute or transform, the more powerful the spell. And I think this relates a bit with the concept of any form of technology advanced enough is magical. I would say that this isn't particularly accurate, because in, let's say, within the sci-fi context, in real world magic is actually enacted by the balance of mandala, the state of mind, the mental image, or what you feel as well, the mudra, the gestures, the hand signs, the way that your body is positioned, and mantra, the magical words. You need three of them. The three, I would say, the true essential magical components. You need those three, a balance with those three. If you don't have a balance between mudra, mantra, and mandala, you won't be able to cast spells in science fiction. That's why another reason why so many people fail in those situations. You can see some very famous people in the occult history, and they are so frustrated because how come I can do this but I can't do that? And that's because there was a lack of balance. Maybe they knew their mantra and their mudra, but they had no maybe they didn't know their mudra. They sorry. Let me try again. Maybe they knew their mudra and their mantra, but they didn't know about their mandala. And it could be the other way around. Maybe they knew about their mandala and not their mudra, etc. So there was that lack of balance. And in Zetsuen, not Tempest, the reason why this happens is that the aliens in that sci-fi, they want to measure the technological advancement of humanity so that they don't become a threat. So when the characters are casting spells and they are transforming these technological objects, they're actually sending those objects across space and time to these aliens, and they are like, okay, thank you for showing you the technological advancement of your planet. Here's some magic in return, which is probably some sort of technology. Remember that technology is the application of science. It doesn't mean that it has to be very complex. If you do something with your body, what they call like life hacks, sun gazing, the Wim Hof method, which is actually the fire breathing method from Tibet, that's a way of a technological hack, so to speak. You are using your body as the technology or the development of that technology. So the aliens reward them with these spells, but then they started to notice that humanity was too advanced in their technology. So they say, what are we going to do? They are a potential threat. Let's send these trees that drain the energy from the planet, and they cause this disease that people start to turn into stone. And if they don't survive that, well, good riddance, and it's better for us because now they are not a threat. But if they manage to overcome that, it means that perhaps they managed to obtain some sort of harmony, they worked together, they eliminated the evil of the planet, let's say, and now they work together to save humanity. So in a way, it's kind of like a huge test of the aliens. So it's a very unique, within that science fiction setting, it's a very unique take on how magic is, magic happens, magic occurs in that sci-fi, because it's actually a controlled process carried out by the aliens. You send the technology, they see how advanced the civilization is, they send magic as thank you for spying on the planet, well, on that world, And when the technology seems too advanced, too threatening for the outer space beings within that context, you know that the context of space in sci-fi is very different when compared to reality. Okay, so I think that's a very unique take, and that's a way of, if you're a game master and you're running a campaign based around that for your players, you could surprise them like that all this time your magic was actually the reagents that you had to use during your spells. They were actually pieces of technology that you were sending to these beings, and they were rewarding you with the magical effect, but now you have become too much of a threat. So now they have started this sort of apocalyptic process. And remember that I did a video talking about apocalyptic settings. The links will be in the description. And now we are presenting this apocalypse, like I said, or this threat, to see if you survive it, if you are worthy. So yes, that's a unique take in my opinion. I hope you enjoyed this video. If maybe you found it entertaining, informative. Remember that this is all science fiction, fantasy, science fantasy. Definitely check out the links in the description. I am currently undergoing a process. I carry out this process every 3 or 4 months. There's a lot of incorrect information about this process. Maybe I will do a video on it because it's also related to a particular aspect of tabletop role-playing game sessions. A certain thing that a lot of people do, and it breaks immersion, and it's related to that. So maybe after this video I will make a short video about it. So thank you for watching this video again. Let me know your thoughts. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.